What happens when the walls you build to protect yourself become the very prison that destroys you? What if the one person who could set you free carries the blood of everyone who hurt you? Would you open the gate, or would you let your own bitterness consume you whole? They say bitterness is a poison you drink, hoping someone else will die. But what they don't tell you is this: bitterness does not just poison your enemies, it freezes everything around you, your joy, your purpose, even your future. This is the story of a woman who built an empire from her pain, only to discover that the key to unlocking her heart had been sitting at her gate all along, wrapped in the face of her greatest betrayal. Because sometimes, the child of your enemy can become the daughter your soul has been waiting for. Once upon a time, in the heart of Lagos, there stood a mansion so beautiful it seemed to belong in a dream. White marble columns rose toward the sky. A circular driveway of imported Italian stone curved through gardens that should have been lush and green. Security cameras watched every angle. Electric fences hummed with power. From the outside, it was the picture of success, the kind of home that made passers-by stop and wonder what kind of person lived behind those imposing gates. But if you looked closer, something was wrong. The roses that lined the pathway were withered and brown, despite the gardeners who tended them daily. The fountain in the center of the courtyard sat dry and silent, its marble cherub staring at nothing with empty eyes. Even the grass seemed reluctant to grow, patchy and yellowed, like it was afraid to thrive. The mansion was magnificent, yes, but it felt abandoned somehow, as if joy itself had packed its bags and left years ago. This was the home of Adanna Okonkwo, and the rumors about her had spread across Lagos like wildfire. They called her the Ice Queen, the billionaire with the frozen heart. Some said she had made a deal with the devil. Others whispered that she was cursed, that everything she touched withered and died. Servants lasted months before fleeing. Business partners watched their shares mysteriously decline. Even the stray cats that wandered onto her property seemed to avoid the place. Before we dive in, can I ask you for a quick favor? This story took days of effort, writing, recording, editing, every moment crafted with care. Supporting me does not cost a thing, but it means the world. So if you enjoy what you are seeing, tap that like button. Subscribe if you have not yet, and drop a comment with your location. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. I read every single one, and I will be shouting out some of you in the next video. All right, let us get back to the story. Inside this cold palace, Adanna moved like a ghost through her own life. At 42, she was still stunning, the kind of beauty that made men forget their words and women check their reflections. Her skin was flawless mahogany, her cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass, her eyes dark and deep as forest pools at midnight. She dressed in designer labels that cost more than most Nigerians earned in a year. Her hair was always perfect, her makeup never smudged. But there was something missing behind those beautiful eyes, something dead. She walked through her living room, past furniture worth millions that no one ever sat on, past paintings by famous artists that no one ever admired, past photos that had been turned face down years ago, their smiling subjects hidden from view. Her heels clicked against the marble floors, the only sound in a house that seemed to swallow noise like a tomb. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Mama. Without hesitation, she pressed decline and kept walking. It was the 47th call from her mother in 6 months. She had not answered a single one. In the kitchen, her house manager, a nervous woman named Mrs. Chidinma, approached with trembling hands. "Madam," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "the gardener is asking if he can try a new fertilizer for the roses." He says the current one is not working and perhaps... Adanna did not even look at her. Fire him. Mrs. Chidinma blinked. Fire him? But madam, he has only been here for 3 weeks. He is trying his best to... Did I stutter? Adanna's voice was colder than the air conditioning that pumped through the mansion. Fire him today. And find me someone who can actually do their job. She walked away, leaving her house manager standing there with tears forming in her eyes. This was the 3rd gardener this year, the 4th driver, the 2nd cook. No one lasted long in Adanna's employment because no one could meet her impossible standards, standards that seemed designed to ensure everyone failed. Outside the estate, where the massive gates separated Adanna's cold world from the bustling streets of Lagos, a very different scene unfolded each morning. Street vendors set up their wares. Motorcycles buzzed past carrying passengers to work. Children in uniforms walked to school in groups, laughing and chattering. And there, at the corner near the gate, sat a little girl with a cooler of pure water balanced on her head. Her name was Chimaka, and she was 8 years old. Her dress was faded and patched in 3 places. Her sandals were held together with wire. But her smile could light up the darkest room, and her eyes sparkled with a joy that seemed impossible given her circumstances. Every morning, Chimaka would walk from the cramped house she shared with 12 other children to this spot near the big mansion. She would arrange her sachets of water neatly, call out to passing cars, and wait for customers. And every morning, she would wave at the security guard, Uncle Emeka, who had become her friend. Uncle Emeka was a large man with a kind face and a secret soft spot for this cheerful child who never complained about her lot in life. He would sneak her biscuits when no one was looking. He would let her sit under the shade of the gatehouse when the sun became too punishing. He did not know why, but something about this little girl made him want to protect her. Chimaka had noticed something strange about her favorite sitting spot near the estate wall. The weeds there grew faster and greener than anywhere else. Flowers seemed to push through the concrete cracks whenever she sat there long enough. She did not understand it, but she liked the feeling of that place. It felt warm somehow, like being wrapped in her late mother's arms. One morning, a black Mercedes with tinted windows approached the gate. Chimaka stood quickly, pure water in hand, hoping for a sale. The car slowed as the gate opened, and for one brief moment, the tinted window rolled down. Inside sat the most beautiful woman Chimaka had ever seen. Her face was like something from a magazine, perfect and cold and somehow terribly sad. Their eyes met for just a second. Chimaka smiled her brightest smile and waved enthusiastically. "Good morning, Auntie. God bless you." Something flickered across Adanna's face. Not quite anger, not quite fear. Something deeper, something she could not name. She looked away sharply, pressed a button to roll up the window, and the car glided through the gate. Chimaka watched it go, still smiling, though she felt a strange heaviness in her chest. That beautiful auntie looked so lonely, she thought, like she had never had anyone wave at her before. That night Adanna sat alone in her study, surrounded by financial reports that painted an increasingly grim picture. Her accountant, Mr. Boniface, stood before her desk, sweating despite the air conditioning. "I do not understand it, madam," he stammered, flipping through pages of numbers. The investments were sound. The market conditions were favorable. But somehow everything is declining. It is like what? Adanna's voice was sharp. Mr. Boniface hesitated. "Forgive me, madam, but it is like everything you touch turns to dust." The silence that followed was suffocating. Adanna stared at him with eyes that could freeze fire. "Get out," she finally said. Now. After he fled, Adanna poured herself a glass of expensive wine and stared at the wall where a single photograph was hidden behind a stack of files. She had not looked at it in years. She did not need to. She remembered every detail of that image. Herself in a white wedding dress, smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. A man beside her, handsome and charming. A future that seemed full of promise. She pulled the photo out and stared at it for a long moment. Then, with careful precision, she tore it down the middle and threw both pieces in the trash. For 5 years, Adanna had built walls so high that even God could not see over them. She told herself it was strength. She told herself it was survival. But strength does not make your garden die. Strength does not make your servants afraid to smile. Something else was happening to Adanna. Something she refused to name. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most, tap the like button. Let us make sure this story reaches someone who needs to hear it tonight. 5 years earlier, Adanna was a different woman entirely. She laughed easily. She hugged freely. She fed stray cats that wandered into her compound and stayed up late talking with her best friend, Neoma, about their dreams for the future. She had built her logistics company from nothing, a small office in Surulere that grew into a fleet of trucks serving all of West Africa. Her husband, Chukwuemeka, was a handsome lawyer who had swept her off her feet with poetry and promises. Life was not perfect. 3 miscarriages had left scars that never fully healed. But she had hope. She had love. She had Neoma, her best friend since secondary school, the woman who had held her hand through every heartbreak. That day, Adanna returned home early from a business trip in Abuja. She had rushed through her meetings, desperate to surprise her husband. She carried gifts, a bottle of his favorite whiskey, a tie she had spotted in a shop window and knew he would love. She was humming a song as she walked through the front door, her heart light for the first time in weeks. The house was quiet, which was strange. Usually the housekeeper would be moving about, preparing dinner. Usually there would be music playing from Chukwuemeka's study. Adanna climbed the stairs, still humming, still smiling. She pushed open the bedroom door, and her world ended. Chukwuemeka was in their bed, their marriage bed, and beneath him was Neoma, the woman who had been Adanna's maid of honor, the woman who had cried at their wedding and sworn to always protect their friendship, the woman who had rubbed Adanna's back while she sobbed after each miscarriage. They did not see her at first. They were too absorbed in their betrayal to notice the door opening, the gifts falling from her hands, the bottle of whiskey shattering on the floor. It was the sound of breaking glass that made them look up. Neoma screamed and scrambled for the sheets. Chukwuemeka's face went pale as death. But Adanna did not scream. She did not cry. She did not lunge at them with the fury they deserved. Instead, something inside her simply went cold, like a switch had been flipped, like her heart had been flash-frozen in an instant. She looked at them with eyes that had already begun their transformation into ice. She set down the remaining gift, the tie, on the dresser. She straightened her dress, and she spoke in a voice so calm it terrified them both. "I want you both out of my life by morning." Then she turned and walked away. She did not look back. The divorce was brutal and thorough. Adanna had never been stupid. She had kept records of every business decision, every investment, every asset. She had protected herself legally, even when she believed she would never need to. Chukwuemeka had signed a prenuptial agreement without reading it carefully, too confident in his charm to imagine a future where his wife would not adore him. He lost everything, the house, the cars, his share of her company, even his precious sports memorabilia collection. Adanna took it all with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. But the betrayal of her husband was only the first wound. The second came from the people who should have held her together. Her family gathered in her mother's living room in Enugu. Her mother, her brother Obinna, her sister Chisom. Adanna had come expecting comfort. She had come expecting righteous anger on her behalf. She had come expecting the love of family to help heal the gaping hole in her chest. Instead, she found judgment. "Every marriage has problems," her mother said, not meeting her eyes. "You should have tried harder. A good wife finds ways to keep her husband satisfied." Obinna nodded, his arms crossed over his chest. "Chukwuemeka told me you were always working, always traveling. What did you expect him to do? Sit alone forever?" And Chisom, her own sister, the one she had protected from bullies in primary school, the one she had sent to university when their father's money ran out, added the final knife. "Neoma was wrong, but you pushed him away first. Maybe if you had been softer, more available, more—" Adanna listened to every word. She let them finish their accusations and their excuses. She watched them defend the man who had defiled her marriage bed with her best friend. She watched her own blood side with her betrayer. Then she stood. She looked at each of them in turn, and she spoke the last words she would say to her family for 5 years. "I will never forget what you said today. Any of you." She walked out of her mother's house. She did not look back. And in that moment, Adanna Okonkwo began to freeze. What followed was a transformation that shocked everyone who knew her. The soft woman who fed stray cats and laughed at her own jokes disappeared. In her place emerged something harder, colder, unstoppable. She poured her pain into her business. She worked 18-hour days. She made deals that terrified her competitors. She expanded into shipping, into warehousing, into international markets that no one thought a Nigerian company could crack. Headlines called her the comeback queen. Business magazines put her on their covers. Her net worth soared past the billion-naira mark and kept climbing. But no one saw the cost, the friendships she ended with a single cold email, the employees she fired for minor infractions, the charity requests she rejected without reading, the mansion she bought in Lekki, filling it with beautiful things that brought her no joy, the church she stopped attending, the prayers she stopped saying, the mirror she learned to avoid because she did not recognize the woman staring back. Now, 5 years later, Adanna stood in her dying garden and wondered why nothing grew. She walked past the empty fountain and wondered why she felt so hollow. She looked at the spot near the gate where the weeds grew inexplicably green and felt something she could not name. Her head of security approached, a tall man named Chief Okoro, who had worked for her since the beginning. "Madam," he said carefully, "that spot where the flowers are growing. It is where the pure water girl sits every day." Adanna's jaw tightened. The girl with the ridiculous smile. The girl who waved at her every morning like they were old friends. The girl whose joy seemed to mock Adanna's misery. "Chase her away," she said. "I do not want street children near my property." That night, Adanna dreamed of ice cracking. She dreamed of flowers pushing through frozen ground. She dreamed of a little girl's smile warming her from the inside out. She woke up sweating, more disturbed than she had been in years. If you believe that every child is innocent, no matter who their parents are, tap the like button. Let us stand for the children who did not ask to be born into broken situations. Uncle Emeka approached Chiamaka with heavy steps the next morning. His face was sad, and he could not meet her eyes. "Small madam," he said, using the nickname he had given her. "I am sorry, but you cannot sit here anymore. Madam has ordered that you leave." Chiamaka looked up at him with those bright eyes that saw more than most adults realized. She nodded slowly, picked up her cooler, and walked to a spot further down the street. She did not argue. She did not cry. She simply moved. But the next day, she was back near the gate, just a little further from the wall. And the day after that. And the day after that. Each time she was chased away, she would return to a new spot, still smiling, still waving at every car that passed. One afternoon, the sky opened up without warning. Rain poured down in sheets. The kind of sudden Lagos storm that turned streets into rivers within minutes. Chiamaka had no shelter. Her pure water was soaked. Her thin dress clung to her small frame as she shivered against the gate wall. Uncle Emeka looked at this child, trembling and wet, and his heart broke. He knew he was risking his job. He knew Madam would be furious. But some things mattered more than employment. "Come," he said softly, gesturing to the gatehouse. "Stay until the rain stops." Chiamaka's smile, somehow still bright despite her chattering teeth, made him certain he had made the right choice. Adanna's car pulled up while the rain still pounded the earth. Through the windshield she saw the gatehouse, and she saw the small figure huddled under its awning. The girl looked up as the car approached, rain streaming down her face, and smiled. "Good evening. Ma, God bless you." Something cracked inside Adanna. Just a small fissure, barely noticeable. Then it sealed back up, and the ice returned. She summoned Uncle Emeka to her study that evening. He stood before her desk, prepared to lose his job, prepared to defend a child who had no one else to defend her. But Adanna did not fire him. Instead, she handed him an envelope thick with cash. "Give this to the girl, 50,000 naira. Tell her to never come back." Uncle Emeka took the envelope, though his stomach churned. "Yes, madam." The next morning, he stood before Chiamaka with the envelope in his hands. He explained that the rich auntie wanted her to have this money, but she had to leave and never return. Chiamaka looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then she pushed it back toward him. "Tell auntie I do not need her money. I just like sitting here. It feels like my mother is close." Uncle Emeka blinked. "Your mother?" The child's smile faltered, just for a moment. "Mama died when I was born. I never knew my father. But when I sit here, near Auntie's house, I feel warm, like someone is loving me from far away." When Uncle Emeka reported this to Adanna, something shifted in her cold heart. Not much, just a tremor. But it was enough to make her do something she had not done in years. She hired a private investigator. Mr. Okafor was a former police detective, thorough and discreet. Adanna told herself she only wanted to ensure there was no security risk. She told herself this was purely practical, nothing emotional. While Adanna waited for answers, Chiamaka lived her life in the margins of Lagos. She shared a mat on the floor with 4 other girls in Mama Blessing's overcrowded house. She woke at 4 in the morning to fetch water from the well 3 streets over. She walked miles every day to sell her pure water, and she gave half her earnings to Mama Blessing to help feed the other children. But at night, when the others slept, Chiamaka would kneel on the hard floor and pray. She prayed for the other children. She prayed for Mama Blessing's aching back, and she prayed for the beautiful auntie with the frozen heart. "Please, God," she would whisper, "send her someone to smile at her. She looks so lonely." What would you do if you discovered that the child you kept pushing away was praying for your healing every night? Would it change how you saw her? Mr. Okafor returned 2 weeks later with a file. He looked nervous, which was unusual for a man who had spent decades dealing with Lagos criminals. "Madam," he said carefully, "I found information about the girl, but I must warn you. It is complicated." Adanna waved her hand impatiently. "Just tell me." He opened the file and began to speak. Chiamaka, 8 years old. Mother deceased, Neoma Adaeze Okwu. Father listed on birth certificate, Chukwuemeka Okonkwo. The world stopped spinning. Adanna's face drained of all color. Her hands began to shake. She stared at Mr. Okafor as if he had just spoken in a foreign language. "What did you say?" He repeated the names, though he suspected she had heard him perfectly the first time. The girl's mother was Neoma, the woman who had betrayed her, the woman who had destroyed her marriage. And the father was Chukwuemeka, her ex-husband, the man who had defiled their marriage bed. This child, this smiling, waving, prayer-offering child, was the living proof of her greatest humiliation. Adanna threw the file across the room with a scream that had been building for 5 years. "Get out! Get out!" Mr. Okafor fled. Alone in her study, surrounded by scattered papers and the shattered remains of her composure, Adanna wept. She had not cried since the day she walked in on her husband's betrayal. She had not allowed herself the luxury of tears, the vulnerability of grief. But now, the dam broke. She sobbed until her chest ached. She cried until no more tears would come. And underneath the grief, another emotion burned. Rage. Have you ever received an apology you never expected? Or are you still waiting for one? Drop a comment. Let us talk. And if this story is touching your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. For days, Adanna wrestled with demons she thought she had conquered. The revelation about Chiamaka had cracked something open inside her, and now all the poison she had been storing came flooding out. She did not sleep. She barely ate. She paced her mansion like a caged lion, arguing with herself, screaming at walls, throwing things that shattered in satisfying explosions of glass and ceramic. One voice inside her was cold and cruel. Destroy her. Send her away. Let Neoma's child suffer the way you suffered. Let the daughter pay for the mother's sins. But another voice, softer and older, a voice that sounded like the woman she used to be, kept whispering, "The child is innocent." She did not choose her parents. She did not ask to be born into this mess. Adanna began driving past the gate multiple times a day, watching Chiamaka through tinted windows. She saw the girl share her last sachet of water with a stray dog that looked as thin and hungry as she was. She saw her give her final piece of bread to a younger child from Mama Blessing's house. She saw her smile at people who ignored her, wave at cars that never stopped, maintain her joy in circumstances that would crush most adults. This child born from betrayal was somehow the most generous person Adanna had ever seen. And that realization made her feel something she had not felt in years: shame. Meanwhile, Chiamaka continued her prayers. Every night, kneeling on the cold cement floor, she would whisper to God about the beautiful auntie in the big house. Mama Blessing noticed. She was a round woman with kind eyes and hands, roughened by years of caring for children no one else wanted. One evening, she sat beside Chiamaka and asked who she was praying for with such dedication. The auntie in the big house, Chiamaka said simply. The one with sad eyes. Mama Blessing frowned. Child, that woman is known throughout Lagos as heartless. They say she fires servants for smiling. Why would you pray for someone like that? Chiamaka considered this for a moment. Because sad people just need someone to smile at them. You told me that, Mama. You said hurt people because they forget how to be soft. Maybe no one has been soft to her in a long time. Mama Blessing's eyes filled with tears. She pulled the little girl into a hug and held her tight. Strange things began happening at Adanna's estate. The security team reported to Chief Okoro, and Chief Okoro reported to Adanna with barely concealed superstition in his voice. Wherever the girl sat, plants grew healthier. One day she had stumbled near the gate, reaching for a dropped coin, and her hand had touched the dying rose bush. Within a week, that bush exploded with blooms more vibrant than any they had seen in years. Adanna watched the security footage obsessively. She watched Chimaka's touch bringing life to dead things. Then she looked at her own hands, remembering every plant that had withered under her care, every flower that had drooped when she walked past. One night, desperate for answers, she drove to Yaba to visit Pastor Chibueze. He was an old man now, white-haired and bent, but his eyes were still sharp. He had baptized Adanna as a baby. He had married her and Chukwuemeka. He had watched her walk away from the faith 5 years ago, and had prayed for her return ever since. "Adanna," he said when he saw her, not surprised, as if he had been expecting this visit. "You look tired, my daughter, not the body, the soul." She told him everything, the betrayal, the bitterness, the frozen heart, the dying garden, the strange girl who made things grow. Pastor Chibueze listened without interrupting, nodding slowly, as if each word confirmed something he already knew. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Bitterness is a winter that kills everything it touches, Adanna. Your heart is frozen, and it is affecting everything around you. The coldness inside you is spreading to the world outside. That is why your garden dies. That is why your investments fail. That is why everyone who gets close to you eventually runs away." Adanna's eyes flashed with defensive anger. "You do not understand what they did to me." Pastor Chibueze leaned forward, his ancient eyes filled with compassion. "I understand what you are doing to yourself. You are letting 2 people who betrayed you continue to steal your joy years after they left. They are living in your head rent-free, taking up space that should be filled with peace." She left without responding, but his words followed her home. Mr. Okafor called the next day with additional information. Before she died, Neoma had left a letter with Mama Blessing. It was meant for Chimaka when she turned 18, but Mama Blessing, in her simple goodness, had allowed the investigator to photograph it. Adanna opened the email with shaking hands and read, "My darling Chimaka, I do not have much time. The sickness is taking me. I need you to know, I made a terrible mistake. I destroyed my best friend, the kindest woman I ever knew. Adanna never deserved what I did. Chukwuemeka never loved me. He used me, then abandoned us both when I told him I was pregnant. I hope one day you find Adanna, not to ask for anything, just to tell her I am sorry. She was the sister I betrayed. Please, my daughter, do not carry my sins. Be better than me. Be kind like Adanna used to be before I broke her. I love you. Forgive me." Adanna read the letter 3 times. Then she collapsed onto her bed and cried for the second time in 5 years. Neoma had died knowing she was wrong. She had died asking her daughter to apologize. She had died remembering the woman Adanna used to be, the kind woman, the soft woman, the woman who had been buried under 5 years of ice. And Chukwuemeka, the great love who had supposedly been driven into Neoma's arms by Adanna's coldness, had abandoned his pregnant mistress without a second thought. The narrative Adanna had built, the story that justified her frozen heart, began to crumble. If this story is stirring something in your heart, tap that like button. And if you believe that forgiveness is possible, even when it feels impossible, keep watching. The next morning, Adanna did something she had not done in 5 years. She walked to the gate herself. No driver, no security escort, just her, wearing simple clothes instead of her usual designer armor, walking across the dying lawn toward the one spot where flowers still bloomed. Chimaka saw her coming and scrambled to her feet, her cooler of water balanced on her small head. Her smile was immediate and genuine. No fear, no hesitation, Good morning, Auntie. God bless you. Adanna stopped a few feet away. For a moment, she just looked at this child, really looked at her. She saw Neoma in the shape of her nose. She saw Chukwemeka in the curve of her chin. But she also saw something else, something that belonged only to Chiamaka, a light that nothing had managed to extinguish. She knelt down, bringing herself to the girl's level. Her voice, when she spoke, shook with emotions she could not control. What is your name? Chiamaka Ma. It means God is beautiful. Do you know who I am? Chiamaka nodded, still smiling. You are the auntie in the big house, the one with sad eyes. Adanna felt tears threatening to fall. You think I am sad? Yes, Ma. But that is okay. Sad people just need someone to smile at them. That is what Mama Blessing says. And what would you do if you saw a sad person? I would pray for them every night until God helps them remember how to be happy. The ice around Adanna's heart cracked. Not completely, not yet, but enough to let a little warmth seep through. For the first time in 5 years, she smiled. Adanna invited Chiamaka inside for lunch. The staff was stunned. Madam had never allowed strangers into the mansion. She barely tolerated the people who worked there. But here she was, leading a street child through the marble hallways, pointing out paintings and sculptures as if giving a tour. The cook prepared a feast: jollof rice, fried plantains, grilled chicken, chin-chin, everything a child could dream of. Chiamaka sat at the massive dining table, her eyes wide with wonder, her small hands trembling as she reached for the food. But she did not eat first. Instead, she looked up at Adanna with those bright eyes and asked, Auntie, can I take some to Mama Blessing and the other children? They would love this food so much. Adanna stared at her. Here was a child who had likely never had a full meal in her life, and her first thought was of others. The shame Adanna felt was overwhelming, but so was something else. Hope. After lunch, Chiamaka reached out and touched Adanna's hand. She gasped softly. Auntie, your hands are so cold. Are you sick? Adanna looked at their joined hands, her own pale and chilled, Chiamaka's small and warm. She felt something like electricity pass between them, something like life being transferred from the child to the woman. I have been sick for a long time, child, but I think I am getting better. Just as the ice around Adanna's heart began to thaw, her world was shattered again. She was in her study when Chief Okoro entered with a grave expression. Madam, there is a man at the gate. He is demanding to see you. He says he is Chiamaka's father. Adanna's blood ran cold. She knew before she even saw him who it would be. Chukwemeka stood at the gate, older now, worn and desperate. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. The confident man who had broken her heart was gone, replaced by someone who looked like life had beaten him down repeatedly. Adanna walked out to meet him with Chief Okoro and 2 security guards flanking her. She stopped on her side of the gate, refusing to let him any closer. What do you want? Chukwemeka tried to smile, that charming smile that had once made her knees weak. Adanna, please, let us talk like civilized people. I have heard that you have been spending time with my daughter. Your daughter? Adanna's voice could have frozen fire. You mean the child you abandoned, the child whose mother you left to die in poverty. His smile faltered. I made mistakes, Adanna. We all make mistakes. But she is my blood. I have rights. You have no rights. Adanna stepped closer to the gate, her eyes blazing. You denied paternity when Neoma came to you pregnant. You never sent a single naira to support that child. You let her mother die of an illness she could not afford to treat. And now, what? Your businesses have failed. Your second wife has left you, and suddenly you remember you have a daughter. Chukwuemeka's face hardened. The courts will decide that. I will file for custody. Blood is blood, Adanna. The law will be on my side. He turned and walked away, leaving Adanna standing at the gate with dread pooling in her stomach. That night she visited Mama Blessing. The woman's house was small and crowded, filled with children of all ages, all wearing second-hand clothes, all with stories of abandonment and loss. Mama Blessing told Adanna everything. How Chukwuemeka had denied the pregnancy. How Neoma had come to her doorstep, sick and desperate, with a newborn she could barely care for. How she had died 6 months later, whispering apologies to a woman who was not there. That child has been through enough, Mama Blessing said, her eyes hard with protective fury. Do not let that man take her. Adanna made a vow. Whatever it took, Chiamaka would be protected. She began legal proceedings to adopt Chiamaka. But she knew Chukwuemeka would fight. He was desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. She knew he might call her family as character witnesses, the family she had cut off, the family who had blamed her for her own betrayal. If she wanted to save this child, she would have to do something she swore she would never do. If you believe that love can heal what blood cannot, hit that subscribe button. This story is about to reach its most powerful moment, and I do not want you to miss it. The drive to Enugu was the longest 3 hours of Adanna's life. She had not seen her mother in 5 years. She had not spoken to her siblings since the day they blamed her for her husband's betrayal. Every kilometer brought back memories she had tried to bury. Childhood laughter, family prayers, the feeling of belonging somewhere. Her mother's compound was smaller than she remembered. The paint was peeling. The garden was overgrown. It looked like a place that had been abandoned, even though people still lived there. Adanna parked her car and sat for a long moment, gathering courage. Then she stepped out and walked to the front door. Her mother opened it before she could knock. The old woman had aged dramatically in 5 years, her hair now completely gray, her strong back now bent with time and grief. But when she saw Adanna standing there, her eyes filled with tears, and her hands began to shake. Adanna, my daughter, my daughter. She pulled Adanna into an embrace so tight it squeezed the breath from her lungs. And Adanna, the Ice Queen of Lagos, the woman who had frozen her heart against all feeling, wrapped her arms around her mother and held on like she was drowning. They sat in the small parlor, drinking tea like civilized people, while tears streamed down both their faces. Her mother spoke first. I failed you, Adanna. When you needed me most, I failed you. I was so worried about what people would say, so concerned with keeping the peace, that I abandoned my own daughter. I have not slept a full night in 5 years. Adanna listened. Part of her wanted to unleash 5 years of anger, 5 years of hurt, 5 years of bitter isolation. But she thought of Chiamaka, a child forgiving her mother's sins before she even understood them. She thought of Neoma's letter, asking for forgiveness, even from the grave. Yes, Adanna finally said, you failed me. You all did. You took the side of the man who broke my heart, and you made me feel like it was my fault. Her mother nodded, accepting this truth without defense. But, Adanna continued, her voice softening, I am learning that forgiveness is not about the person who hurt you. It is about freeing yourself. I have been carrying this anger for 5 years, and it has poisoned everything. My business, my home, my heart. Can you forgive a foolish old woman? Adanna looked at her mother, really looked at her. She saw the regret. She saw the love that had never died, even when it was buried under pride and poor choices. She saw a woman who had made a terrible mistake and had been paying for it ever since. I am trying, Mama. I am trying. Her siblings came that evening, Obinna and Chisholm, both older and humbled by time. They apologized with tears and trembling voices. They asked how they could make things right. They listened as Adanna told them about Chimaka, about the adoption, about the court battle that was coming. By the time she left in Nugu, Adanna had something she had not had in 5 years: family. The custody hearing took place in a Lagos courtroom packed with people. Chukwuemeka sat on one side with his lawyer, looking confident despite his desperation. Adanna sat on the other side with her own legal team, her mother, her siblings, and a file of evidence that would destroy any claim he tried to make. Chukwuemeka's lawyer painted a picture of Adanna as cold, unstable, and unfit to raise a child. He talked about her reputation. He talked about the staff who had fled her employment. He talked about 5 years of isolation and bitterness. Then it was Adanna's turn. Her lawyer presented evidence that shocked the courtroom. Bank records showing that Adanna had secretly funded Mama Blessing's orphanage for 2 years, ever since she learned Chimaka was there. Testimonies from staff members who had watched their madam transform in recent weeks. Letters from her reconciled family members testifying to her character and her change of heart. And finally, Chimaka was called to speak. The little girl walked to the witness stand with her head held high. She looked at Adanna with a smile, then looked at Chukwuemeka with no recognition at all. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Obi, leaned forward. "Child, do you know who that man is?" Chimaka shook her head. "No, Ma. He claims to be your father." Chimaka considered this. "My mother told Mama Blessing that my father did not want me. She said he ran away when I was in her belly." The courtroom murmured. Chukwuemeka's face turned red. Justice Obi continued. "And what about this woman, the one who wants to adopt you? Do you know her?" Chimaka's face lit up. "Yes, Ma, that is Auntie Adanna." "And do you want to live with her?" Chimaka's answer came without hesitation. "Yes, Ma, I want to live with Auntie Adanna." She was frozen, but she let me melt her heart. She did not have to love me. My mother hurt her very badly, but she chose to love me anyway. That is what real mothers do, Ma. They choose. The courtroom fell silent. Even Chukwuemeka's lawyer had nothing to say. Justice Obi ruled in Adanna's favor. Full custody was granted. Chukwuemeka was denied all parental rights due to abandonment and failure to provide support. He was ordered to pay years of back child support and was barred from contacting Chimaka without court supervision. Outside the courthouse, Chukwuemeka approached Adanna one last time. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something ugly and defeated. "You took everything from me," he said. Adanna looked at him with something that was almost pity. "No, Chukwuemeka, you gave everything away. You just did not notice until it was gone." She took Chimaka's hand and walked toward the car, toward the future, toward the life that was finally beginning to bloom. Months passed. The mansion in Lekki transformed. The gardens exploded with color, roses in red and white and pink, bougainvillea climbing the walls, the fountain restored and singing with clear water. The grass grew thick and green, and birds returned to nest in the trees. Even the sunlight seemed warmer, like it was no longer afraid to touch this place. Inside, the changes were even more profound. Laughter echoed through halls that had known only silence. Children from Mama Blessing's orphanage visited regularly, filling the rooms with noise and chaos and joy. Adanna's mother came to stay for weeks at a time, spoiling Chimaka with traditional dishes and stories of Adanna's childhood. Adanna stood before the mirror she had avoided for years and smiled at her reflection. The woman looking back was still beautiful, but she was no longer cold. There was warmth in her eyes now, softness in the lines of her face. She looked like someone who had walked through winter and finally found spring. Chiamaka ran up behind her and wrapped her arms around Adanna's waist. "Mommy," she said, using the name that still made Adanna's heart skip. "Can we plant a tree today?" They walked into the garden together, the mother who had chosen and the daughter who had been chosen. They dug a hole in the rich soil. They placed a young sapling inside. They covered its roots with dirt and water and hope. "Mommy," Chiamaka asked, "what kind of tree is this?" Adanna knelt beside her daughter, their hands covered in earth, their faces lit by the Lego sun. "It is called the Tree of Forgiveness, my love. We are planting it so we never forget. Every winter ends, every frozen heart can thaw, and every child, no matter where they come from, deserves to be loved." Chiamaka hugged her mother tightly. "I love you, Mommy." Adanna held her close, feeling the warmth spread through her chest, feeling the last remnants of ice finally melt away. "I love you too, my daughter, my beautiful, unexpected gift." The tree's first leaves unfurled in the sunlight, small and green and impossibly hopeful. They say bitterness is a winter that kills everything it touches. Adanna learned this the hard way, watching her empire crumble, her relationships wither, her very soul freeze. But she also learned something else. Winter does not last forever. Not when you let love in. Not when you choose warmth over revenge. Not when you open your gates and let a little girl with a big heart show you what you had forgotten. Chiamaka's name means God is beautiful. And in the end, that is exactly what she was. God's beautiful gift, sent to remind Adanna that the child of your enemy can become the daughter of your heart. Some of you watching have built walls so high you cannot remember what the sun feels like. Some of you are holding on to bitterness that is poisoning everything around you. Some of you are punishing yourselves for someone else's betrayal. This story is for you. Let the walls come down. Let the ice melt. Let love in, even when it comes from unexpected places. Especially when it comes from unexpected places, because that is where grace lives, in the spaces between our pain and our healing, in the moments when we choose forgiveness over revenge, in the children who teach us how to be human again. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do something right now. Hit the like button, not for me, but so this message reaches someone whose heart is still frozen. Subscribe if you want more stories that heal and transform. And leave a comment. What would you have done in Adanna's place? Would you have been able to love the child of your betrayer? Where are you watching from? Let me see your location in the comments. Remember, bitterness is a prison you build yourself. But forgiveness is the key that sets you free. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next story.